going on with marijuana in this state?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Good Friday evening to you. We're going to take a break from the fast pace of Washington and even the state of the state ramifications and the budgetary news and all that kind of stuff that comes during this week on a traditional basis, and kind of have a broader conversation with one component of the marijuana dilemma? Situation? I wouldn't call it a crisis. Might be for cultivators in the state. We'll talk to one tonight and get his perspective on something that just doesn't make any sense to me, and that is how this whole medical marijuana strategy is rolled out here in the state, and the ensuing conversation that is sure to come somewhere down the line about legalization of marijuana across the General Assembly. So we like Friday nights, right? Because we don't tape on Fridays. We tape our Friday shows on Thursday, so in case something really incredible happens and we're not addressing it here tonight, we do that on Monday. Also gives us a chance to kind of spread out a little bit. So here's a headline from recent developments. In response to the General Assembly's more or less cohesive momentum to building out 6 more compassion centers. Compassion Center is the fancy word for the place that sells the marijuana to medical marijuana card holders, right? And in Rhode Island, we have 3 of them. And they are allowed to grow their own product, but they don't have enough to service the needs of the medical marijuana population. And so early on, in a scramble to get this whole thing going, the state authorized by license people who want to invest in a business to grow, to sell to these 3 dispensaries, who can also cultivate their own stuff. And so far the formula seems to have worked for some and not others, but there's a major deal happening here. And Steph Machado for Target 12 has been, chronicling the marijuana story for a while now. She does a pretty good job on a darn good job on this. Here's what kind of lays the whole thing out.
The strain, they all have THC.
Rhode Island's finest gardens has been growing cannabis since 2017. Domenic Passarella and Antonio Barone say they and 3 other partners put their life savings into building this grow facility in Warwick.
I can't see how we could stay in business if the new centers would be able to grow.
The 51 state-licensed cultivators are currently the supply chain for the 3 existing medical marijuana compassion centers, who sell it to more than 18,000 patients. Those compassion centers also grow some of their own cannabis. The legislature approved 6 new compassion centers last year for a total of 9. Governor Gina Raimondo then proposed to make the new centers retail only through regulations, so they can't grow. House and Senate leadership shot back last week with a new bill making it clear the executive branch cannot stop the compassion centers from growing cannabis.
Where do they expect cultivators to sell to?
Passarella fears unless Rhode Island's finest gets one of the coveted new compassion center licenses, this business's doors are closing.
Our lighting bills close to around 13 grand a month. Labor, lease, water, sewer, testing. Doesn't make sense to put all that money into a company that you have no place to sell the product.
House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello and Senate President Domenic Ruggiero, the lead sponsors of the bill, declined to be interviewed for this story, but said in a joint statement the 3 existing compassion centers are able to grow and are limited by statute to their patient needs. This creates an open marketplace and an equal application of the law.
Which is confusing. But that's their line, and while they may have been inaccessible to Steph for that particular story, they were not inaccessible after they were standing at the rostrum after the State of the State speech, where I asked them questions, and you're going to hear the audio version of that coming up later in the broadcast. Let's put it this way. The Speaker of the House specifically has no compassion for cultivators at all. Also confusing this has been litigation between the governor and the General Assembly. The governor sued the General Assembly. When the General Assembly decided they were going to write into the proposed law the ability to override the regulatory discretion of the administration on how to execute the growth of the compassion centers. So the governor, not liking what the General Assembly was doing, just went ahead and sued them on a separation of powers argument. Now, that gets a little confusing for everybody, but I will tell you that the new bill that is out now is, the new version of it, is a response to the lawsuit, which mitigates the separation of powers stuff because it establishes kind of a new foundational argument for the compassion centers, and by law tells the regulator, meaning the Department of Business Regulation, working for the administration, what it can't do by law. But Steph eliminating that simplified the conversation because it's been this back and forth. All right, Domenic Passarella is the guy that's in that piece. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you. Before we get into the nitty-gritties, cultivating, growing marijuana is, as we can see in the video, a clean process, right? It's not just some backyard, thing where you clip some plants, you shave it down, you put it in a bag, and you sell it to some guy in the corner, right?
I, as the owner, am not allowed to go into most of the rooms. That's reserved for the personnel that are working in that have showered, that have their scrubs on. I don't even go in there.
How are they trained? What's the technology and the science behind it?
A lot of it, because it started from basically the patient program, a lot of it people have learned on their own, just kind of like ancient home brewing. You try, you fail, you try, you fail, and you eventually figure it out. You go on the internet, you figure it out. And some of our team, they've just over time became subject matter experts. They are just good at what they do. They love what they do.
You have to smoke pot to grill pot?
I don't. I have never smoked marijuana. I've taken some edibles. They are unbelievable for muscle spasms. I get muscle spasms very easy, but I think everyone should be able to establish their own comfort level with it. I will never tell someone they should or shouldn't.
This is kind of an unregulated technology, though. So you're telling me it's like, yeah, if you learned on the internet or if you've been kind of doing it yourself for a while, you can work in a cultivation plant like you have, correct?
Like any other job, it's attention to detail. It's the desire to learn something, and it's the desire to want to be as good as you can at something.
Are there? But because the federal government doesn't regulate this, doesn't recognize it as a legal activity, it's kind of a funky deal, right? I mean, usually we have standards. The Food and Drug Administration will have standards for growing all sorts of product that we induce. Your business doesn't have a lot of pressure, at least right now, correct?
That's correct. It has internal pressure. It just has an internal desire to put out the best product we can. We don't use pesticides. We don't use fungicides. Like I said, I'm not allowed in the room because access control is your #1 way of keeping everything clean.
You decided to get in this business, why? What did you do prior?
Prior, I do underground sprinklers. That's what I still do. I have rental properties. That's what I still do. I'm not making money from this by any means. Believe me, we're not. I'm not pulling profit out of this business.
Why?
Because we have to reinvest. We have to keep it in there for some dark times.
You're not suggesting you're doing it for benevolent only reasons.
No. So before you asked me.
So your model doesn't have you making profit yet, is what you're telling me.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we're quite a few years away from that, but.
But you decided, you and your fellow investors decided to get into this because?
We saw an opportunity. At the time, my friends were patient growers. They were supplying the compassion centers in accordance to the law at the time. They said, hey, this is great, you know plants, do you want to do this too? And at that time, the legislation came out that they wanted to formalize it. They wanted to have compassion centers. I read the writing on the wall and I said, they are looking to formalize this. They didn't put a limit on it like they could have with the compassion centers. So we saw it as an open opportunity. We saw it that they want to establish an industry here.
So they created a law that allowed a license for cultivators.
Yes.
The license requires what?
It requires security. So through the regulations in the law, you have to have security. So we have video camera feeds in all of our rooms. The building has to be built out a certain way. All of our floors have to be non-porous. There's a ton of different regulations. We go well above and beyond those, so sometimes I even forget what's the bare minimum.
So those regulations are from the state. I was asking you about regulatory issues before, and you kind of acquiesced to the idea that it's not, kind of a non-regulated business. The state has put in regulations for the facilities, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, and you comply with that. There's some 51 cultivators in the state, correct?
Correct.
You're one of them. I'm guessing that you're one of the larger ones, yes?
By license type, I think the majority are Class B, and we're in that Class B.
Class B versus?
Class A, so a Class B can do 10,000 square feet of basically area inside the building that marijuana touches. A Class A can do 5,000, and a
So you're in the bigger category?
Yes.
You're in the bigger category. All right. You got a problem right now, based on the story. You're being legislated out of a market, even though you were legislated into the business. Opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, when we come back, I'm going to talk about that. And I think you're going to hear some interesting commentary by our legislative leaders on this. Stay with us.
I felt that with Massachusetts going online, Connecticut about to come online, New York and New Jersey proposing it, it wasn't practical any longer. We're going to face the public health and safety issues, like it or not, because it's on our borders. Money is not the reason to do this at all. In fact, there isn't very much money associated with the program.
Meaning legalized marijuana. Now, we'll see. I mean, there's been some other benevolent efforts here that we know have been tied to cash flow to try to cure budget holes. So the governor, though, has been freelancing on this legalized marijuana conversation and has been met with stone cold no's from the Senate President and the Speaker of the House. Your cultivation business model, did it contemplate the eventual legalization of marijuana? You'd have to be, like, clueless if you didn't, right?
Yeah, but we saw that as a pretty distant possibility in the future.
Distant meaning what? Months, years, decades, what?
At the time it was years, now it's going to be years plus years, but
What does that mean?
maybe a couple more years, maybe never. You know, I respect people's opinion on...
Did you think that you'd be profitable? Like, if you come to me and say, hey, Dan, you want to throw some money into this thing? I'd say, okay, well, what's the game plan? What do you see as the landscape, right? Is the medical marijuana market enough for you to eventually turn profit?
Absolutely.
With the 3 compassion center model that exists right now,
Yes.
exclusively?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we're fighting to... That's why we're fighting. There's something
Right,
to lose.
so the state set up 3 compassion centers and cultivation licenses with no limit. As long as you abided by the regulations for setting up cultivation, you were able to do that. Now, early on, they had, homeowners that could cultivate and sell, and they knocked that off because that was getting messy, right? So just licensed cultivators are able to sell to the 3 compassion centers. Mm-hmm. The compassion centers you've described to me are kind of growing their own as well, but really only kind of achieve 1/3 of their need, ballpark.
Yeah.
And the cultivators, so the 51 cultivators supply the other 2/3 of the need to the 3 existing compassion centers.
Yep.
So the bill that the General Assembly is going to consider and maybe shove through is to grow another 6 compassion centers, each of whom also will be able to cultivate, correct?
Correct.
Your concern is now that the math doesn't work, that they are cutting and dividing into an existing marketplace of medical marijuana users, and the idea that they can grow actually puts, according to you, the thing over capacity. In other words, the cultivation availability is now way over the need, correct?
Yeah.
Did you have any input into the legislative process to try to explain that back when?
No, that kind of came through at the end of the session. We were caught off guard. Everything seemed like it was going in one direction. And maybe about 3 days before the budget was released, we got word that there's going to be some things in there that we don't like. And that's when it came out.
All right, so your argument, as Steph put it, is very clear. You're jammed up here. You're a local business that took an opportunity created by legislative initiative, an environment to licensed cultivators. You're delivering product right now to the compassion centers. I'm guessing what you're telling me is if you're not making money now, you've got a lot of upfront costs, right? So
Yeah.
eventually, the upfront costs will leverage out and
Yeah.
amortize out. And at your current gross revenue levels right now, selling to the compassion centers, will you eventually profit?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. But now you're in a situation where you have no one to sell to.
You can't make profit if you don't have sales.
Got it. Yeah, does everybody get that? So after the State of the State, there's kind of a tradition where reporters and me get into a scrum, as we call it, and we ask questions, and you've seen it, that kind of thing. Well, I was there, as I usually am, and I just figured since I have the Senate President and the Speaker of the House standing next to each other, I would throw this to them. This is a radio interview done right off the phone. It's almost 3 minutes long, so it's bad television, but it's an important conversation, and I wanted to give this to you. So give this a listen. So I missed it. She didn't mention much about legalizing marijuana or your proposal on the 6 additional compassion centers. While we've got both of you here, you want to explain what the logic is there? Because I'm confused over the idea that we're adding compassion centers that can cultivate, while 51 cultivators are saying that you're going to put them out of business. I don't understand. Is there a capacity problem with medical marijuana that we need those additional centers? And what's the long-range strategy here for both of you?
You have long range and short range. The state has issued far too many compassion center cultivated licenses. And the compassion centers, you need more retail outlets, you need more competition. Right now you have 3 compassion centers. They can grow as much as they want. They're not buying from anyone. There's really no marketplace. So we're trying to create a marketplace, more retail outlets, and it's up to the retail outlets, according to the General Assembly proposal, to determine whether or not they're going to grow or buy from cultivators. But let's make no mistake about it. There are far too many cultivators. Some of them are not going to survive long term, and you're never going to have a marketplace unless you have the compassion centers on an equal footing with one another. It'll always be the 3. Under the governor's proposal, the 3 can grow as much as they want, and everybody else is somehow restricted, so they will always monopolize the marketplace. So long term, the state's not going to have a good system.
Do we need more capacity, Speaker or Mr. President?
I don't know if you need more capacity. I think it's a question of fairness. If you're adding 6 new compassion centers, they have to be on equal footing with the current 3 that we already have.
Well, that begs the question: why are we adding 6 new compassion centers? That's
because you have a monopoly. The price is too high, and the 3 are not buying off the current cultivators. So there's no marketplace. The 3 control the whole show.
But reportedly, they produce 1/3 of their total capacity in terms of cultivation.
Talk to the cultivators. There's really no marketplace at this time. I've spoken to them, and the 3 are driving the price, and they're buying it at cost. There's no marketplace. It's a monopoly.
And of course, both of you are not inclined to talk about legalizing marijuana on a commercial level, correct?
Now I'll leave that to the
I am not supportive of that at this point in time. I have a lot of questions, a lot of unanswered questions, and I am not supportive of that at this point.
And for those who worry that this is a setup for that inevitability, is that what this is all about? Having more capacity and retail already set up for an eventual legalization?
No, absolutely not. We've both indicated that we have concerns. It's creating a marketplace reduces price. I think the price is too high for the consumer. You need more competition. You need real competition so that our patients are better taken care of. You cannot have a monopoly of 3 out into the future, 20 years, if you want to look at it from the perspective the governor did. It's unacceptable. You need competition. The price will come down.
Puzzling. He's suggesting the 3 compassion centers aren't buying from you.
Yeah. Yep. And you know something, what I hear there? I hear opportunity because there's some misinformation. They're very knowledgeable, and I respect them. I blame ourselves, cultivators. We did not do a good job last session explaining our position, explaining the market to the General Assembly. I can't blame anyone else but us. That is what we started to do once the budget was released last year. That's what we're going to do this year. We're pounding the pavement. That's all we can do.
Well, that's diplomatic, but I don't buy it. Next. Look, I appreciate your diplomacy, and clearly you've decided that one of the ways to skin a cat is to kill him with kindness at the General Assembly, and that may be a road that will be well traveled here when it's all said and done. But when a General Assembly passes legislation to create 6 compassion centers, more than the 3 that we have, somebody's got to do some diligence and know what the heck is the truth. You cannot have a disparity of facts that are so blatantly obvious that the Speaker of the House would champion a bill to grow the compassion centers by 3-fold, thinking that the cultivators already aren't even selling to the first 3. How much tonnage or poundage or leafage or plantage do you sell right now to the cultivators yourself? I mean, to the 3 existing compassion centers now.
So I'll speak at the market in total if I can.
Yeah,
so
real
right,
quick. Just
right now, compassion centers and cultivators sell 5 tons a year. That's what the current market is. That's with compassion centers growing at 100%, cultivators growing at 12%. If market demand grows and cultivators can produce at full capacity, we can produce a combined 27 tons of medical marijuana a year.
Why would we need all that?
That's an excellent question.
Well, why would you bring it up? Why would we need all that?
Well, factor in, that's exactly my point. Why do we need more capacity? That doesn't even factor in the patients and caregivers, which it's wonderful that a patient can grow for themselves. That, if you add that capacity, that's another 216 potential tons of marijuana in Rhode Island.
I don't want to confuse this. You're asserting that the cultivating community is providing roughly 2/3 of the need of the current compassion centers, correct?
Correct.
End of data. The Speaker says you're not giving them anything. You're not selling them anything. They're all growing it themselves. That is a wire crossed that is completely unacceptable. And so we got to get this story straight at the General Assembly. I mean, this is an emergency of legislation. They're trying to run this thing home pronto on a fact basis that doesn't make any sense, which tells me that something is smelling about a lot more than the scent of marijuana here. That this is about something else, and it has to do with financial opportunities, taking care of people, and what the legalization market might bring down the line. Yes?
Yeah, and the only thing we can do is inform.
I'm not so. No, you can sue, and you can do a lot of things. I mean, the idea. I don't know how you remain calm listening to. I don't mean you're going to jump up and down here. I don't know how you remain calm though with that disparity of facts laid out by the Speaker of the House between what you're saying, the industry's saying, and what he's saying.
We can only.
You have an emergency. You should be calling a press conference this week to say he doesn't know what he's talking about. If it's true.
I was on the House floor last night.
10 seconds.
I'm going to be on the House floor tonight. I have a meeting with one of the sponsors of the bill tonight. I have an association meeting tonight.
Listen, I appreciate you doing the show. You need a broader message, and I would hurry. But we'll stay in touch with you. And thank you for coming. Really? Next. I tell you, in all my time here, I've never seen such a fact disparity in an important situation in the state. How can the Speaker be running around thinking that the current compassion centers make all their own product when the cultivators say, no, we provide 2/3 of it? I mean, that is malpractice. Have a good weekend.